This is the story of a man from New Zealand and a woman from England stuck in lockdown in London. Hello to you.
Hello.
It is day 9.
It is murder day.
It's supposed to be murder day, but there haven't been...
Fuck me, it's getting close.
There haven't been any murders.
I've hidden all the knives.
You can feel the knives.
I've hidden all the knives.
Oh, you've hidden all the knives. You think I'm going to kill you?
No, it's for your protection I've hidden all the knives.
Yeah, but that means you know where the knives are hidden.
There are only 4. Yeah.
So you know maybe I should hide the knives. Maybe we should split it and we should each hide half of the knives.
Yeah, I just remember where my penknife is.
Okay.
That's okay.
I thought something a little bit different. What we could do today is ring up our friend Mark, who runs the Big Nerd Pub Quiz.
Yeah, because that is awesome.
And
if you're
and
not
talk
listening to
him.
that, you should.
Yeah, so he's got another one on tonight. So I figure let's give him a call.
Yeah.
And let's have a yarn to him about how the Big Nerd Pub Quiz is going and what he's doing.
Yeah.
All right.
Do you want me to call him?
Yeah, give him a call.
Okay. As if he doesn't have enough on this plate, he's got to talk to us.
Hello.
Hey, Mark.
Hey, man, what's going on? You right?
Yeah, we're all good. We're just recording our podcast, and we thought we might have a yarn with you about the Big Nerd Pub Quiz.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for listening and doing the very meta podcast, the last episode. I really enjoyed listening to that, and it gave me a real sense of what it's like to actually play it, and it was really interesting to see what questions stumped you. You know?
Most of them. No. It was. I have to say, I did a New Year's quiz on New Year's Day that was run by an organisation that I'm a member of called the London Appreciation Society, and out of the grand total of 50 questions, I think I got 4 right. So
Wow.
your questions are much better.
And what sort of things were they asking you in that one?
So I think there were 5 rounds of 10 questions each, and the first one was kind of general knowledge-y, but I think one of the, if it wasn't the first question, it was certainly in the first 3 or 4. It was what was the tunnel that featured in what was the name of the tunnel that featured in the background to a movie, and I can't even remember the title of the movie, but it was made in the 50s. So I was just like, I've never heard of this film.
Oh, wow.
Let alone heard of this tunnel.
You know, Mark's thinking about pinching that question right now.
If I can find the, because I tweeted or not tweeted, I messaged various people about it in the aftermath while I was still getting over the shock. But I will find the question and let you know. So there's general knowledge round. There was one all about London dogs, or dogs that had something to do with London. And the questions were things like, what was the name of the terrier that is in the part of the HMV, his Master's Voice logo, and where one of the questions. So one was, what was the name of the dog?
Mark's writing these down right now.
Another one was, what was the address where that portrait, that silhouette of the dog was done.
Oh my God! I wouldn't even know that.
Yeah, okay. Exactly. It was tough.
Let's talk about Mark's quiz,
yeah.
rather than another quiz that you did some time ago somewhere else. Oh, Mark will love this. Let's talk about all the quizzes that I've done in my life.
No, I was just outlining examples of questions, which is why I only got 4 out of 50.
Yeah, no, it's all good. It's all good.
What are you having to go through to organise your quiz, Mark? Like, how long is it actually taking you to put together?
It takes roughly a turnaround time of about 3 days, and that starts off with basic research of the questions, formatting of the questions, and then I have to sit and research the accuracy of the questions. I got nailed on one that I got wrong, and it was a mistype in my first quiz. So I'm making sure to really double check all of these.
Was that the Ned Flanders question?
It was the Ned Flanders question, and it's one of those ones I'm never going to forget or is going to be allowed to live down. But at the same time, so that there's that element to it. The element required of the actual graphics, putting the questions up, the editing of, say, like I'm doing a movie round tonight, or not a movie round. I'm doing a video compilation round of historical events, and you have to guess the year. And again, I really enjoy making them, but again, that takes time. It takes time researching it, putting it together, even coming up with what questions I'm going to ask. So I have to do that. That takes about a couple of hours. And then the actual yes, they're putting together the graphics, they're putting together the actual quiz document itself, double check to make sure all the questions are correct and in the right order, and got the correct points. That takes about a good day. I'm in the middle of doing it now. I'm double checking the questions at the very end, and then I'm going to go ahead and put them in and start the actual graphics now. So yeah, it's a huge turnaround, and I actually have to do on top of that, do the social media. And message my subscribers and YouTube channel management. So yeah, it's a full-time job promoting it.
Yeah, I can see how much work you're actually putting in, but I also noticed, like, in grand comparison to our 8 listeners, you've actually got 1,000 followers on YouTube already.
1,500
in a week.
In a week.
In a week.
That is amazing. Well done.
I mean, that's a reflection on the incredibly hard work that you're putting in. And
I'd say it's one of the things about the actual listenership and the viewership. Like I said, it's all kind of organic, but at the same time, I'm amazed at how fast people have responded and got back to me and shared it, because I don't think in any period of history I would ever have this audience or ever have the people doing this, because like who would want to do an online pub quiz on a Saturday night or a Wednesday night? Normally there's Champions League football or there's the pub, and I have an audience right there who are going to tune in, and they're going to watch. No other time is that going to happen. So and again, not exploiting it in any way, but I'm grateful that I have the opportunity to do it, so
yeah, and like many people out there, we're grateful that you're doing it. So it's it's breaking the routine for us. It's very good fun. Very good fun.
Breaking the routine from, we watch this Disney movie, we watch that pornography, we watch this piece of Netflix, we eat that lasagna. Like, yeah, routine's much the same.
I tell you one thing, for me coming home, I left London just about a week and a half ago and came back to Ireland. All my work dried up. I was working in live music, and I ended up coming back home to be with my parents. And like 2 days in, I thought, what can I do I thought the idea of doing a pub quiz online just with my mates would be a great idea, and it just kind of took off after that, and it started to get a lot of media attention. I'm by no means the only online pub quiz, but I don't know, there's something about mine. I don't know, people just seem to like to share, and I'm really happy, because I think there's bigger organizations like Joe.ie, I think, do one, and a couple of sports podcasts do bigger quizzes, but I'm just very thankful for that. I've got my followers, and I'm really happy that they've tuned in every week.
One of the things I noticed straight off the bat, straight from the first episode, was how good it all looked. It looks great. It looks so professional. Who's doing all your graphics?
It's me. I basically the graphics, the design, the branding. It's all me. I basically I think I borrowed a template and kind of shopped about and looked about at various kind of color coordinations and I kind of wanted something that would stand out and make sure the brand was consistent. But also I think the name can be a little bit misleading. I've had some feedback. The first night I did it, Big Nerd Pub Quiz, was a very nerdy, very how can I say, it was very niche.
I loved it.
Yeah, it was very, very niche.
I can tell you I scored much higher on the nerd one than I did on the general one.
Really? I'll have to look back at your scores. Like,
you stay away from my scores.
But the one thing about it is, for me, looking at, like, I did the first one, and even looking back, God, that is very, very nerdy. Like, who would know the registry number of the USS Discovery? Like, that is extremely niche. So, you did?
Yeah, I got that one.
And then I thought, because I got some more people, and I thought better to open it up a bit. And I think the name does apply for everybody, because everyone's a nerd on some level. Even if it is the biggest nerds in the world are sports nerds. They don't know they're nerds, but they are. And so I've included a sports one. I've included a literature one. I've included an arts music round. Obviously not using music because bloody copyright issues there, but and I got really nailed in that in the first episode, which again, one of the little technical asides. But tonight's video does have copyrighted material, but using very, very small clips. Not definitely not playing like swathes of John Williams music. I think that's what screwed me up the last time.
Yeah. The round I did the worst on, I consider myself somewhat of a music aficionado. Yeah. But you had all the album covers, and we were supposed to be guessing. I blew out so badly. I was really,
What?
I was really down on myself. I was like,
God.
how can I get all these wrong?
Even the Kraftwerk one? How do you
Yeah,
not know
I got
Kraftwerk?
the Kraftwerk one wrong. I absolutely blew a tire, and yeah, I was gutted. Eh? So
I'll give you a
hopefully,
little. Yeah. Hopefully tonight there'll be something. But I was just going to give you a sneak preview of what you've got on tonight. So basically, round one's going to be geography, and it's going to be about cities. So each answer is a city. Round two is the movie round, but this one is going to be basically I'm listing three movies directed by a famous director. You have to figure out which is the director, and I've picked really obscure ones. So it's not just like Jurassic Park, Jaws, and Schindler's List. Like everybody knows that. I've picked like very, very niche, very,
Damn,
very
I would have
niche
got that one.
films for this. Yeah, that's it. But they're all very obvious directors as well. That's the thing. But round three and round four are a two-parter round. There's a program back in Ireland called Reeling in the Years, and it's on RTE, and it's a very enjoyable clip show, basically made up of archive footage from news footage and music videos and from Ireland and around the world for particular years. So it's everything from like 1961 right up until now, up until 2010, as I think the last episode did. And it's a really fun show for people to watch because it's such a nostalgia trip.
Yeah.
So round three and round four is basically a reeling in the years type compilation. I'll play like a particular year, like for example, 2019, and it'll be particular events from that year, and you have to guess what the year is.
Oh, cool.
And then there's secondary there's questions tied into that in the next round, asking you to kind of be a little bit observant and figure out what pick out little details in the video. So there's a kind of there's two elements to that. Sports round as always, arts and literature round as well. The special themed round this week is numbers. So every answer is a number, and of course the music round at the end. So 8 rounds again.
cool, man. Well, we'll be tuned in, same as we have for the last 2 episodes, and we'll be enjoying it from the comfort of our home.
I tell you one thing, man. Your exasperation and it was like, oh my god, an hour and a half of a quiz. I just picked that number out of thin air because I thought, well, I've got extra rounds, but I think I've got the quiz down to a nice. All technical issues aside, I think I can get the quiz running at a nice, solid 60 minutes.
Yeah.
60
perfect.
minutes to 70 minutes, perfect. And I think that's enough time. I don't want people getting sick of me, sick of my face and sick of my voice. I figure I've got it down to a nice 60 minutes. And it's been, I think the tighter I get it, my parents watch it downstairs and they panic. They actually go into a state of sheer kind of how can I say they don't enjoy watching it
Bless them.
because they're just like afraid of something going wrong, and they're like, oh my god, and I was like, guys, just relax. Even if something does go wrong, it's not a big deal. Like tonight's prize, by the way, we're giving away a T-shirt again. So if you're lucky to win, my good friend Rhoda over at Norn Iron Tees. This is like a very specialist comedy T-shirt website. Basically, she's sponsoring our prizes for the time being, and it's been great. So
It's better than you having to fork out $50 on Amazon.
yeah, no way doing that anymore. Like I remember I've given away the 50 quid already, and I thought, wait a second, am I doing this twice a week? I don't have a job yet. But I do have a Patreon page, and people are donating.
Yeah.
Not super loads, but people are donating to the Patreon page. It's patreon.com/Big Nerd Pub Quiz. By all means, donate a quid. If everyone donated £1, I would be really appreciative of that, and it would make this quiz so much worthwhile for me. And I'm going to keep making them as long as this crisis of it, continues. Like I'm more than happy to keep making it. Because it's given me something to do. It's given me a bit of purpose. Like I spent the last couple of weeks unemployed because of coronavirus, and I'm thankful I have a platform to entertain people and to give a distraction. Because I think one of the best. Our Prime Minister, the Taoiseach in the Republic of Ireland, he said in his address to the nation, it's like, don't read the news. Stop reading the news for a while. It's just good for your mental health. And I completely agree with that. I think I'd really go off my head if I watch the news all the time, and I don't. I actually try to keep away from it as much as I can. And I try to keep washing my hands. That's the only thing I keep doing. Just keep washing your hands.
Stay home, wash your hands. Yeah.
Yeah, God, I swear to, how are your hands keeping up? Mine are red raw.
Yeah.
Yeah, ours are falling apart. They're so crusty now from the washing and the hand sanitizer and stuff. So.
Oh God, I feel like so I've got it's like scales
Yeah.
on my hands. It's harsh.
Yeah, you're not the only one.
I'm someone who's never lifted a thing in his life. Like, you know what I mean? I'm a very sheltered. You know, I've never grafted. Like, you know, so this is all new for me.
Oh, well, thanks for taking the time to talk to us today, Mark.
Oh, here, a pleasure, and thank you for listening. Share it with your viewers and your listeners, and I'd be absolutely chuffed to have them.
Oh yeah. The 8 people who listen to our podcast are definitely going to move over.
Here, do you guys want to plug tonight? I'll plug it to my viewers.
No, don't do that to them. Like, you're a nice guy.
No, it's happening. You're getting plugged.
All right, Mark. We'll let you go. Thanks, buddy.
Cheers, mate. Take care, guys.
We will.
Stay safe.
We will.
You too.
Bye.
Oh, it's lovely to talk to Mark. Big Nerd Pub Quiz. It's easy to find on all the social media. He's across Instagram and Twitter, and the show goes out on Facebook and YouTube.
Yep.
So look it up.
Yeah.
He was talking a lot about sports and the fact that all of these sports have disappeared.
Yeah.
You know, overnight. That is a huge part of where people spend their time.
Part of the structure of the week, isn't it?
It
like
is
he
part
was
of
saying, Friday night, Saturday nights and Wednesday nights were when the big matches were on.
So
she says, sounding like she knows what game they were playing in those matches.
One of the countries out there that was trying to keep their sports going longer than probably anyone else was Australia. They have Australian football, and they have rugby league, and they were trying to keep these matches and rounds on the park for as long as they possibly could. And one of the reasons is because all of the financing, basically the players' pay and everything else, it sort of runs week to week. It's all based on the fact that the game is going ahead. So they tried to stay on longer than probably anybody else, and it didn't really work out for them. And now they're sort of going into their own sort of financial crisis. Certainly more the rugby league as opposed to the Australian rules. Australian rules is, I think, a bit more money in the bank. But with the Australian rugby league, I came up with an idea. Of how they could continue the season, because a lot of their money doesn't actually come from gate takings. Yes, they make money on the gate for sure. 10,000 people show up. You're going to make money. But it's the broadcasting. It's the broadcasting where they make their mega bucks. They've got. I think it's.
So what are you thinking? Do it as an empty stadium and just play it over the TV?
They looked at doing empty stadiums, but it wasn't going to work because they still had to travel. And what's happened in Australia now is that it's not just Australia that's locked its borders. It's the states themselves within Australia that's locked its borders. And the Australian Rugby League, I'm sure, spreads itself all around Australia at different times. But most particularly between New South Wales and Queensland. And if you can't move between those two states, you can't do anything, And there is a New Zealand team in the competition. They had looked, I think, at sticking everyone inside a single stadium or two stadiums next to each other and trying to do it that way. But again, logistically speaking, it simply wasn't going to work. But I've got an idea. Australia, in terms of its coronavirus situation, right, the leadership isn't that great.
Yeah.
It's been quite wishy-washy, much like it has been in the UK.
Yeah.
And it's falling on its arse a wee bit. And
what, the leadership or the country?
Well, it's both.
Okay.
But the thing is that they've got cases spiking all over the place.
Yeah.
I don't think that they have the virus under control, and they won't for a long time. I think, unfortunately for Australia, they're going to end up like us and the rest of Europe. It's going to be hard for them.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea that I've got is New Zealand's ahead of the curve. So yes, they're having a spike in the number of people who have the virus in New Zealand.
Yeah.
I think it went up by another 80 yesterday. So
78.
So they have almost 500 people in New Zealand who have the virus.
416.
It's more than that. It's definitely closer to 500.
That's including suspected cases. There are 416 confirmed cases.
Add on the 78.
What?
Yeah, I'm sure I read it correctly. Anyway,
well, I've just googled the
I'm not going to fight with you about it.
Ministry of Health stats, and it says 416.
So there's 400 to 500 people in New Zealand who potentially have the virus.
Yes, potentially.
And, compared to a lot of other parts of the world, that's pretty low. And it is going to continue to go up for the time being, but they are in isolation, they are in quarantine, and hopefully that will start to go down in the near future. And within the next 4 weeks, while New Zealand's in quarantine, the hope will be that they can actually track down and trace every single person who's come into contact with the virus. They'll be able to wipe it out, and life in New Zealand will be able to go back to some level of normality.
Yeah.
So here's my idea. The Australian Rugby League, with all of its teams, I think there's 16 teams in the NRL. One of them's from New Zealand. They get those other 15 teams and they send them to New Zealand. Now, they're going to go into quarantine for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
The same as anybody else arriving from anywhere else around the world. They're going to go into quarantine in New Zealand for 2 weeks. But then, after quarantine, and after... that should match up pretty much with when New Zealand comes out of it, if it's national lockdown, assuming it doesn't extend a little bit longer. But even if it extended for another 1 or 2 weeks, who cares? It's not a big deal, really, in the grander scheme of things. You could then send all of those teams, those 15 teams, to all the different large towns and cities from around New Zealand. You could even have 2 in each town or city in New Zealand. New Zealand's got all the broadcast infrastructure you could need to film sports. Sports is huge in New Zealand. You could run the entire competition out of New Zealand with all of these different Australian Rugby League teams choosing towns and cities within New Zealand as a base and film it all and then have that money coming back in again. So all that, that $1 billion contract, that broadcast contract, they would be facilitating their end of the bargain. The players would get paid again. Everyone would have something to watch. I think there's potential there.
Yeah.
But it would, it's not a small thing to try and pull off. It's a huge logistical thing, and there would be, greater overheads in terms of getting them over there, and certainly putting them up in hotels, because for the most part, most of the teams, the rugby league teams anyway in Australia, are based in Sydney, so a lot of people can just live at home and then, go to practice, go to the games. And they do away games and they fly to different states and what have you, but, for the most part, they get to live at home. They would all have to be living in hotels. But, this wouldn't be a bad thing for New Zealand. I think New Zealand should encourage it, because that's going to be a whole lot of income coming in.
Yeah.
For a bunch of people who work in broadcasting, a bunch of people who work in hotel, a bunch of people who work in tourism, who are all, staring down the barrel right now in terms of their employment and what's going to happen in their lives. And it would, I think it would be a wonderful way to...
At what point do you think they should do this, though? Because it's not, in terms of priorities and essentials, it's not a doctor flying from one country to another, is it?
No. So what would have to happen is...
How many people are in a team?
Quite a lot. And then you've got all the staff.
Yeah.
But you would have to...
Isolate those people away from their families at the point at which they're...
Yes. Well, that's the decision they'd have to make. So what happened when this virus first hit was that the New Zealand team had been playing in Australia and made the decision as a team to stay in Australia away from their families for the rest of the season and continue to play out of a base in Australia.
Yeah.
So that the competition could continue to run. And everyone who was a rugby league fan over there applauded this, because it meant the competition could continue and various other things. And those players, they made that decision on behalf of their sport because they wanted their sport to continue, but also on behalf of their families because they wanted their income to continue. And I think, given that the New Zealand team was so gracious and brave in the way that they decided to do that before, I think the Australian teams, likewise, could turn around and decide to make that same decision going back to New Zealand. Because they wouldn't be there for the entire length of the season anyway. You'd be playing essentially half of a season. But, when it comes to Australian sports, you could still play an Australia versus New Zealand international series. You could still play State of Origin. You could have all of these big events, but you could have them in New Zealand and broadcast them to Australia. And Australians, I'm sure, would love this because Australians, they're going to be locked down for longer than Kiwis. They just are, because the virus is so much more widespread and so much more out of control. They're going to be stuck like that for a long time. So to be able to give them something like that, essentially a gift, that they can watch these sports that they love so much while they're still locked down in their homes, would be a big plus for Australians and New Zealanders, as well as anyone who enjoys sports. So I think there's some real validity in the idea if they can get the logistics right. Which is essentially, you have to bring all of these people into New Zealand. You have to put them in quarantine. You have to test them. And then you have to time it right so that the logistics of running that competition match up with New Zealand coming out of its lockdown and being able to cope with what's happening around it. But I think there's something there.
Yeah, possibly.
And I'm not saying they could do that with Aussie rules, because there'd just be so few places for them to play those sorts of games in New Zealand. Like, New Zealand's a rugby country. It's got all these rugby grounds. You can play rugby league on all of those rugby grounds. No problem. Play that all over the country. But Aussie rules is huge in Australia. It's an enormous sport. Huge crowds, 80, 90,000 people going to a game.
Yeah.
They played on these massive ovals,
A friend of mine
huge
went
cricket
over in
ovals.
Sydney. Yeah.
We don't really have that in New Zealand. We have a couple of places like that where they could play. We'd have a couple of cricket grounds where they could play, but
It would wreck the cricket grounds.
They are cricket grounds, and you really couldn't get crowds in there that you would expect. Also, there aren't very many New Zealanders who follow Aussie rules, whereas there's a lot of New Zealanders who follow rugby.
You don't want the crowds coming anyway.
Well, this is the thing. Once New Zealand comes out of lockdown and goes through its processes and they wipe out the virus, then life in New Zealand's largely going to return to normal. You are going to be able to go to events. You are going to be able to go to sports grounds. The thing that will be different is people won't have any money. They won't be able to buy tickets like they normally could. So crowds may still be small unless they're willing to give tickets away. And I think they should be willing to give tickets away. If they're going to make all this money off the broadcast income and they want it to look good on television, you give those tickets away.
Yeah.
You can't go to a town like a small city in New Zealand like New Plymouth in the Taranaki and base yourself there because they have a ground and expect people to show up week in, week out with what you would normally pay for a face price ticket. That's just not going to happen. So they need to work with the communities and support the communities. But I'll tell you one thing for nothing. Those New Zealand communities will absolutely support those teams. Absolutely.
Adopt them as their own.
They definitely will. They definitely will. Australian rules, perhaps not so much. But if Aussie rules was ever looking for a foothold in New Zealand to kind of expand the sport, because let's face it, Aussie rules doesn't have a huge mass appeal outside of Australia. They play Gaelic in Ireland, but it just doesn't have much of an appeal outside of Australia. And they're constantly trying to push it into New Zealand and other little places around the world to try and get a foothold. It's never going to happen. Well, this is a grand opportunity to take the sport to New Zealand and give it an opportunity. So, it's an idea. It's an idea.
Yeah.
And in the same way, if it works, and they can actually pull it off, then what's to stop other sports going to New Zealand? In Australia, cricket is the number one sport. They've got 1 million cricket players in Australia. They have plenty of cricket grounds all around New Zealand. They're not stadiums like Australia, but they have all of these teams, and they have competitions like the BBL, which is a massive T20 competition. And they could, run the whole thing, again, in New Zealand. If Australia can't get the handle on the virus and they can't run these events in Australia, they could take them to New Zealand and run them there. And they could film it all. And it could be great. And that's not the only thing they could film. Because one of the crazy things is, once New Zealand is able to beat this virus, and it's in this sort of bubble where, the virus isn't in the community, everybody's sort of living semi-normally. All of these other countries like America and the UK, who knows where else, Asia, are going to still want content, right? They're still going to want to make movies. They're still going to want to make TV shows.
Yeah.
Well, they can go and do it in New Zealand. They can go and film every other big budget movie they want in New Zealand because they won't have the virus.
Yeah, but it's keeping it that they don't have the virus. That's the thing that would worry me. If you have
That's what I'm thinking.
Uncle Tom Cobley and all pitching up in your country with that have potentially been exposed and are in that window of not seeing, not displaying symptoms that first week when you have it, but nobody knows you have it, not even you.
No, you have to go into quarantine. When you get the rule is in New Zealand currently, if I wanted to go back there, which I can't anyway, I can't transit to get to New Zealand. All of the usual routes are closed. Singapore, Hong Kong, the States, the Middle East. They've all closed their borders. You can't transit to get to New Zealand, so I can't get back there at the moment anyway. But eventually, some of those transit routes are going to open, and particularly from America, because America will just say, well, I mean, it's not a transit route. They can come directly from America to New Zealand. It's one flight. Yes, it's 12, 13 hours, but it's one flight.
Yeah, yeah.
But once you arrive in New Zealand, you go into quarantine for 2 weeks, and that's fair enough. And if they're really vigilant on the testing side of it, then, they will be able to track who has it and who's come into contact with them in a really strict and careful way. But this is the other side of it. If you've got all of these people coming into New Zealand to play sports and to make movies and to make TV shows, there's going to be an industry spring up in New Zealand to cope with that influx of people and the processing of them to bring them into the country to do this kind of work.
Yeah.
So there's another opportunity for New Zealand, if they can get ahead of the virus, if they can wipe it out, to actually turn that process into an industry and make money out of it that way.
Bad situation.
Yeah. I think there's a huge opportunity, if only they can wipe the virus out.
Yeah, and how are they going to do that? Stay home, wash your hands.
Well, this is the thing. At the moment, they're trying to prevent community transmission in New Zealand. There's been very little of it. Most of the virus that's come into New Zealand has come in on planes.
Cruise ships, planes.
Planes. Well, they stopped cruise ships weeks ago. They just said, you can't come
but people
here.
came in on cruise ships with it. That's
but
a cluster of cases.
But most of them have come in on planes.
Yeah.
And they've gone straight into quarantine. They know exactly where they are, who they've come into contact with.
Yep.
And they are managing to lock it down for the most part. In other parts of the country, there are little, what they call in New Zealand, clusters, and they're trying to keep those under wraps as well.
Yep.
And I hope they do. And I hope they wipe it out. And I hope that in New Zealand, people can see the potential here if they just follow the rules. Because I know people haven't been. There's been people out, surfing, driving long distances, going for a hoon in their car with their mates, going around to friends' places for beers, it's been a little bit loose around the edges. New Zealanders really, really need to understand that they need to stay home and they need to stop this virus because they just aren't living with what we're living with over here. We're shitting our pants about going to the local dairy, about going to the convenience store around the corner.
Yep.
We were discussing that this morning. We still haven't decided if we're going to go.
I'm not going.
If
I was going to go anywhere, I'd have gone and got my leg replastered.
Yeah.
I didn't do that, so I can live without milk. I don't drink anyway.
Mm. Yeah, whereas I've been thinking long and hard about milk and how nice that might be.
No, some will come on Thursday. You'll be all right. Just to live without it until then. You've got alternatives. You've got loads of dairy alternatives in the cupboard. I think for the. I genuinely don't think it is worth the risk.
So for now, we're pretty much agreed it's not going to be worth the risk. I can see the look on your face. You don't want me to go out and risk bringing the virus back into the house.
Yep. We talked yesterday about this is our safe bubble. The house is virus free, but every time we go outside, we run the risk of things are outside of our control. So we don't want to talk to anyone, but that's not going to stop the local weirdo coming up and talking to us.
Well, a large stick might. We just have to carry a stick.
I told you, my humane game dispatcher. It's a truncheon thing that flips out.
It definitely looks illegal.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. But what was I saying? Yeah, and going to the shop, it just it's a petri dish. You know, it's every single surface. You don't know who's handled it in the previous 48 hours.
Well, I was very careful
People have
when I
picked
went.
things up and put them down again. You just
know.
don't know, do you?
Well, I was very careful when I went. So
Yeah.
I was careful not
But
to
you
pick-
went 2 days ago.
Yes, but I was careful not to, you know, when I picked something off the shelf, I made sure I wanted that particular item and I put it in my basket. I didn't pick it up and put it back, that sort of thing.
Yeah, but you don't know that anyone
I
else.
know that. I'm just saying I was
has done that.
constantly conscious of where my hands were and what they were touching, that they weren't touching my face or, you know, anything like that. I was
Yeah.
so careful I didn't pick my phone out of my pocket while I was in there either. I didn't want my hands to touch my phone before I'd had a chance to put hand sanitizer on my hands. The staff were very careful. They were
Yeah.
very careful. They were, you know, sanitizing their hands after every purchase and taking it very, very seriously. They had lots of rules about how many people could be in the shop and how close you could be to another person in the store. I think they were doing a good job. So I completely understand how you're feeling about it, and I agree with you. We won't go to the shop today. We just won't go. I will try to put my cravings for cornflakes on the back burner and just not think about it if I can. It's funny, like once you know you can't
I don't know
have
why
something.
you bought cornflakes. You
Well,
didn't buy
because they
cornflakes, you
were
bought
there.
Frosties. Yeah,
Because they were there.
But the milk
Normally-
wasn't.
No,
so-
I know, but like it's that opportunistic sort of thinking, isn't it? You're in this environment, you don't know when you're going to see something again. Like I thought for sure I'd be able to buy crunchy nut cornflakes when this whole thing started. I didn't realize that they were going to become like gold dust, and crunchy nut cornflakes were not. You just can't get them. You cannot get them. So yes, when I walked past that packet of Frosties, I grabbed them. I grabbed
Yeah.
them. I was like, I need these. You know, it's just what happens. It's the
Yeah.
mindset that changes when you're in that environment. You're suddenly like, oh shit, I need this. Do you? I'm not sure.
No.
But you grab it
Yeah.
because do I need this? You know?
Yeah.
And
well,
but I
you
was
know, in a viral situation, you don't really want somebody with poor impulse control going out and wandering around a shop.
Are you saying you've got poor impulse control?
I'm saying you have. You.
I didn't. It's not like I brought back a load of dross. I brought back dog food, a packet of Frosties, a bottle of Coke, you know, a tin of peaches.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't
Yeah.
go crazy.
You haven't listed anything that we needed, though.
You put on that list chocolate Easter eggs, and I got them for you.
I put chocolate and I put eggs. Chocolate eggs was a joke, but yeah, we have.
So I got the joke thing you put on the list.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Laundry detergent. Laundry detergent was the thing that we needed, and you got that.
Yeah, I
That-
was
that-
stoked to be able to get
That
that.
was good. But everything else that you bought, we could have lived without.
Oh God, what I'm still gutted. You're not impressed by the dog food. I thought I was doing a really good thing. I thought I was being intelligent, and you know, I was doing something nice for you and the dogs after you were complaining about not being able to get dog food. And I got 12 tins of dog
Yeah.
food, and you just don't give a fuck. And it's just like, come on, man, I did this thing for you. It's not for me. I don't like the dogs, you know? And then you're still complaining about not being able to get dog food. I got a week's worth of dog food
You did.
for
You
you.
did. Yeah.
And you just don't care. Anyway, just one other thing. One good thing about rugby league not currently.
Oh
Being-
God,
No, listen.
doilies.
One
I'm
thing.
hearing doilies.
No.
Every time he mentions rugby
Ah.
league, all I hear is doilies.
There's one thing that's good about the rugby league not being on.
Yeah.
And that's that the Warriors, that's the New Zealand rugby league team, that their alternate jersey was piss yellow green.
Okay.
It is the most
I thought you were going to tell me
revolting,
that it means that
disgusting
domestic
jersey.
violence rates have dropped in
No.
Australia because it's not playing.
They're supposed to have worn it on Anzac Day, but it is horrific. It is one of the worst jerseys ever designed, and whoever gave that the green light, whoever put pen to paper and decided this was a good idea, need to give themselves an uppercut. 'Cause it is horrible, truly horrible. Anyway, that's for me, my sports-loving friends. That's not you.
No.
You like other things,
Yeah.
like drawing on your cast. I
Yeah.
can see you've taken to your cast today. What have you done?
I've put flowers on it
And how have you done that?
with the silver Sharpie pen.
And how long did that take you?
I don't know, a couple of minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
You've done quite a lot of the cast though.
Well, I can only reach the front, so I've only done the front. There's nothing on the back.
Yeah, but to be fair, you've gone from top to bottom. You've reached all the way down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I went as far as I could go, yeah.
So it's a good effort.
And avoided the bits that rub, so
Haven't done the back though.
no. Well, I can't reach the back, can I?
Okay. Well, you could let me draw on the back of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I did think about this.
I promise that I will draw pretty flowers. Nothing else.
I think you should write in big letters, Big Nerd Pub Quiz.
So-
Hashtag. And then I can be a walking advert for Mark's show.
If you went outside, which you aren't.
No, but we could take some photos of it. And
But I'd be
it
constantly
everywhere.
reminded
yeah,
every time you walked away from me. Oh, that's right, Big Nerd Pub Quiz.
yeah,
Got to get on that.
yeah. There you go. That's what you can write on it.
There has been other bits of news in the UK. Big bit of news yesterday. Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of the UK, has coronavirus.
Yeah.
Uh,
Every time anyone says Boris Johnson, there are two things that spring to mind. The first is that his initials are BJ, which also stands for blowjob.
Thanks for letting us know.
Yeah, and the second thing is, have I got news for you? Because I grew up watching him be a dick on Have I Got News for You, and I never in a million years would have thought that guy is going to be running our country. And I'm horrified.
How do you feel about him getting the virus?
Meh. You know. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. He's got it, and also the Health Secretary's got it. And I'm not at all surprised that the Health Secretary's got it, because he insisted on getting out there and rolling his sleeves up and pitching in, which is what all health ministers like to be filmed doing. And he did it in a warehouse handling medical equipment. So, funnily enough, he's caught it. He's come into contact with people completely unnecessarily. I doubt for 1 second him handling one box of whatever it was, masks or gowns or whatever, has in any way, shape or form contributed to those things getting to where they need to be on the front line, bearing in mind he was in a warehouse disrupting all of the activity that would have been happening otherwise. And he's come into contact with somebody who's got it, and yeah, well, you know, I can't even remember his name. Matt Hancock.
That's him.
Yes. So, yeah, and obviously Matt Hancock has come into contact with Boris Johnson. So I'm not surprised that the two of them have got it.
You think Matt Hancock gave it to Boris Johnson?
Yeah. Bent him over and gave it to him all.
Because, you know, Johnson has come into contact with an awful lot of people. He didn't stop shaking hands for
No,
a
neither
really
did
long
Charles,
time.
Prince Charles. Yeah.
Well, you know, Prince Charles was trying not to shake hands. He was, you know.
Forgetting regularly, though.
He was, a little bit, yeah. I don't know how he's getting on. I don't know how Johnson's getting on. But it's interesting because before Johnson was... before the news came out that he was infected, a nurse friend of mine said he doesn't look right.
Yeah, but that could be any day of the week.
But she said that 2 days before the news broke. She said, I think he's got it. He doesn't look right. And bang, he did. I mean, if you've got a trained eye for these sorts of things, you know, maybe we should be sending her selfies. But have I got it? She went, no. You don't look good.
That's because you got a knife sticking out your neck.
Now, try to keep your murderous ambitions under wraps. I have. You're still alive. You know,
Yeah.
we're doing each other a favour.
Yeah,
No murders. Well done, us.
yeah.
We have been told that we need to watch a show called Tiger King.
Yes.
It is apparently all the rage.
Yep.
And something that we need to spend some time on.
Yep. Is
So
it a film or is it a series? I don't know what it is.
I
I've seen it. I've seen
know
it appear
nothing
on
about it.
the menu, but I don't know what it is.
It is all the rage, apparently, Tiger King.
Yeah.
And it's on Netflix, and the messages that I'm getting from basically all over the world is we've got to watch this. So I guess we've got to watch this.
Okay.
I mean, what else did we watch yesterday?
Modern Family.
You watched Modern Family? We can't really give that a review, though. What about movies? Watch some movies?
Incredibles.
We watched Incredibles 2.
We did.
The
Well,
interesting...
I watched Incredibles 2. You watched your phone.
Well, it's because I'd sort of seen Incredibles 2 before.
Yeah.
Sort of. When I first saw Incredibles 2, I was asked. I hadn't seen Incredibles. I got asked by a couple of Australian friends to go to a really well-known cinema in Peckham called the Peckhamplex, and it's famous in London for being a little bit sticky and only costing £5 to go to the movies, which
is, yeah,
it's
yeah.
very
It's a
reasonable in
bargain.
London.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You
You
can
pay
pay-
3-4 times that anywhere else in the city.
Yeah, and then you double that price. To give people from New Zealand and Australia an idea of like the cost, it is expensive to go to the film in London.
Yeah.
So £5 to go to a movie's amazing.
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
people will go right out of their way to go to Peckham, to go to the Peckhamplex to see films. And you're often sitting in cinemas that are full.
Yeah.
Full of people, and they're quite a lively audience. They yell and laugh and, you know, holler at the screen and clap.
Yeah, it's not your
it's all
typical
on.
British cinema.
No, it's great. It's a good time. So a couple of my Australian friends said, hey, we're going to go to the Peckhamplex. We're going to go see Incredibles 2. I said, look, I haven't seen Incredibles. They said, it doesn't matter. It's £5. I said, you're right. So we went down. And again, it was packed. It was packed. And we were sitting on the far left back side of the cinema. But on the far right back side of the cinema were these 5 guys who wouldn't shut up. They were talking so loudly over the top of the audience and over the top of the movie. It was just the most disruptive thing. And I found that I really couldn't focus on the film, and I was really starting to fume. I don't usually get my heckles up, but I was... Heckles, I don't know. But I'm sitting there, my arms folded so tightly. I'm just kind of looking at them now, just glaring at them from my side of the cinema because they were so loud. They were so loud.
Yeah.
And it's not a quiet movie. It's not a quiet cinema, but they were right over the top. You could hear them above everything else. It was agony. And I was looking at the people sitting right in front of them. And this is one of the funny things about English people. They don't say anything. They don't want to cause a scene. They don't want to tell them off. So the
Yeah.
people sitting directly in front of them were hunching right down in their chairs. You could see how difficult it was for them. Anyway, about 45 minutes in, I just snapped. I couldn't take it anymore. And I went over behind them and I leaned in and I said, can you shut the fuck up? Like I was really fired up. And then they all start to get out of their chairs and they're all these huge dudes. And they're like, you don't tell me, and all this other stuff. And I don't tell you. I spun around. I kicked the door to get out of the cinema. I kicked the door, kicked the next set of swinging doors. I storm out, and there's these 3 big dudes who work at the Peckhamplex.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there are guys in there who won't shut the fuck up. What are you going to do about it? I was so fired up. I was such a dick. And these 3 dudes are just like you can look at them like they just kind of like they do that big sigh and they kind of tilt their head to one side and they're, oh, don't make us do stuff. Oh, we don't want to do oh man, fine, okay. So I storm back in. As soon as I step back through those doors, these 5 guys are getting up out of their seats. They're all fired up. And then in behind me come these 3 big dudes who work at the Peckhamplex, and they all shrink back down into their seats. And I go and I sit down in my chair and I hump down in my chair with my arms folded. And I'm staring across at this situation as these 5 guys talk to these 3 guys who work there. And then one of the guys who works there looks over at me and shrugs. And they walk out. I'm like, oh, thanks. Great. So these 5 guys, they're a little bit more quiet now
Yeah.
than they had been.
Yeah.
But they were still too loud. And I just kind of given up on the movie. I didn't know what was going on at this stage. I knew it was animated. That was about as much as I knew. And I was like, okay. And as I calmed down a little bit, I realized I need to go to the bathroom. So I just went to the bathroom. And as I went out there to go to the bathroom, the staff were like, are you still here? And I'm like, yeah. They're like, you should go home. I'm like, why? Because you're going to get stabbed. Like, what? Yeah, those guys are going to stab you. They're going to, yeah, that's the plan. Why are you here? Like, you never told me that. You never, like, what the hell is going on here? And like, yeah, you should just go home. Don't go back in there. Just go. Like, I'm like, well, they're like, well, it won't happen here. It won't happen inside the cinema. They're going to wait for you, and you're going to walk out of the cinema, and they're going to stab you. Like, that's what's going to happen. And I was, holy shit! Like, it just came down on me like a ton of bricks. Because you don't get stabbed in New Zealand for telling somebody else to shut up at the movies. It doesn't happen. So it was quite an eye-opening moment for me. And yeah, sure enough, I hightailed it out of there. I was like, oh, see you later, goodbye, gone. And then I text my friends and I said, hey, sorry, I never came back. I got told I was going to get stabbed. So I didn't come back. And so, yeah, I was out of there. And sure enough, when the movie ended and they turned their phones back on, they were like, oh, yeah, I wonder what happened to you. Yeah, well, now you know. Sorry I didn't come back. But that was my previous experience with Incredibles 2. A children's movie that I nearly got stabbed at. So there you go. But yeah, we watched it yesterday. How would you give it out of? What would you review it? How would you?
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the first one. We watched the first one as well at some point. Have we reviewed that already?
No, go ahead.
So yeah, I enjoyed them equally. And normally, you know, when you get a sequel come along, it's never normally as good as the first one. But actually, yeah, I think it was. So I would give them both, I think, a 7 out of 10.
Wow. So you would recommend these movies?
Yeah.
A little fun fact at the end of Incredibles and the start of Incredibles 2, because they just bleed into each other. There's a bad guy at the start.
Underminer.
Called the Underminer at the start of Incredibles 2, voiced by John Ratzenberger. Is that how you say his name?
No idea.
It was Cliff from Cheers.
No idea.
It's the guy from Cheers who's in every Pixar movie.
Okay.
Yeah.
The postman.
Yeah.
The guy who plays the postman.
Yes.
Okay.
Is that Cliff?
I don't know.
I don't know. Anyway, it's been a long time since I watched Cheers.
No, the big guy that sits there. I think you're thinking of the
No,
big guy.
that's Norm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, it's the postman. You're quite correct.
Yeah.
So he does a voice in every single Pixar movie.
Oh, okay.
And he voices the Underminer. And the interesting thing that a lot of people brought up about the Underminer is, you know, at the start of Incredibles 2, not to give too much away, but, you know, he breaks into a bank and steals a whole bunch of money.
Yep.
He gets away.
He
And
does.
we never hear about him again.
No.
So there were all of these messages, you know, online. Lots of people wanted to know what happened to him, wanted to know how they caught the bad guy. Well, the writer-director, Brad Bird, he just came out and he said, well, actually, he got away.
That's leaving it open for a part 3. Because there was a good, 10, 15 years between the first one and the second one, wasn't there?
In terms of making them, but the
Yes,
stories
yes.
go
Oh, yeah. The
right
stories are...
together.
Yeah.
And you can see it a little bit in the animation as well.
Oh,
when you
yeah.
watch those
Quality
two
of the
movies.
animation, having watched the two so close together. Yeah. The thing I really noticed it on was Elastigirl. Yeah, she was drawn quite differently, I think.
But yeah, Brad Bird just said he got away.
Yeah.
And he said it happens. Sometimes the bad guys win. That's what he said. So there you go.
Yeah, he gets caught in the game.
In the game.
Yeah, there was I don't know whether it was a Sony or a PlayStation or a Wii or whatever it was, or the Nintendo, something or other. One of them did a game of Incredibles. Xbox 360 maybe, something like that. I don't know, Xbox. They did a game, and the whole point of the game was catching the Underminer.
Cool. So what other movies have you been watching?
I can't think. I don't watch any movies. I've been tending to watch TV things rather than.
Okay.
I've watched a lot of Modern Family.
Yeah, you recommend Modern Family?
Yeah. Timeless.
It's interesting. That's actually going to come to an end soon.
Yes.
The very last episode of Modern Family is on April the 8th. So they've done almost 250 episodes. Or they will have by the time the series comes to an end.
Yeah, I don't even know how many seasons they've done.
11.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's quite nice watching the kids grow up. Yeah.
Yes. Anyway.
Go on. Talk about it.
I'm not going to talk about it.
You are going to talk about it because you talked about it to the nth degree yesterday.
I didn't talk about it to the nth degree. We were just having a polite conversation while watching Modern Family. But yes, the middle child.
I knew it.
You're the one. You're pushing me into this corner. What am I supposed to do?
Jess's favourite topic of conversation.
It's not my favourite
Teenage
topic.
girls with huge breasts.
It's not my favourite topic of conversation whatsoever. If anything, my favourite topic of conversation is rugby league, and you don't want to talk about it at all.
No, I don't.
You look genuinely sick. Whereas if I bring up boobs, you're like, oh yeah, let's talk about this. Let's peg you into a corner while we're on air so that you have to talk about teenage breasts. Let's see you struggle your way out of this one, asshole. Okay. All I mentioned as a fun fact, it was just a fun fact, was that the
Fun
middle
facts,
child...
the only facts that you retain in your mind about the whole of this series
Do you-
with
okay,
its
this
umpteen actors and actresses.
No, this is what I was saying. This is how the conversation started, because you were watching Modern Family from the very beginning.
I was.
From the very beginning. And I said that the youngest son, grew up to be a really huge dude. And that the oldest girl, the oldest teenage daughter, didn't seem to change very much at all over the course from the start to the end.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you asked me about the middle child or something, and the only fun fact that I had about her was that as a teenager,
Puberty hit,
and she
hit her hard. in the
needed to
chest.
have a breast reduction as a teenager. That's all I'd said.
And Googled.
You didn't seem
Showed me pictures.
You didn't seem to believe me.
No, I just wasn't interested.
Oh, well, you could have just said, I'm not. Anyway, that's all. You know, if people need to, I've dated people in the past who needed a breast reduction. So I'm really familiar with the process and what people have to go through. And it's hard and it's horrible. The whole point that I was getting at was that must be a really difficult thing for a teenage girl to have to go through.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wasn't me being some pervy old dude. As much as you want me to sound like that. Speaking of which, there's going to be a condom shortage. So, another fun fact. Did you hear about that?
You sent me a link about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's less fun if you only hear about it from me.
What do you mean if I...
Like, I know you have contact with other people in the rest of the outside world. But you're just like, oh yeah, you mentioned. Right, okay, yeah. There is going to be a condom shortage, which I think leads into the whole idea that there will be a baby boom in 9 months' time. I think there's a very high likelihood of that baby boom. I think the fact that there's going to be a condom shortage.
Well, the condom shortage hasn't hit yet, has it? I mean, there's people...
No, but it's coming. So... stop it. Okay, one last thing today. One last thing.
Yeah.
There are some people that I know who run a silly movie podcast. That's their own definition of it. It's called Movie Bong.
Yeah.
And the whole idea behind that podcast is that each week they pitch ideas for films that don't exist. And they discuss potential directors, actors, the overall tone, and the plot. And
they're going to make a movie out of us.
No. But over the next couple of weeks, what they're going to do is release some extra special pandemic episodes.
Oh, cool.
And what they'd like people to do is to pitch their own films. And so what they want people to do is basically record themselves pitching these films for 5 minutes, export them as an MP3, and then send them to, got a pen?
Yep.
red@deadcatcomedy.co.uk.
Is it cat with a K or cat with a C?
It's cat with a C. And just via WeTransfer. So you enter that email address into WeTransfer and send them your 5-minute MP3 pitching your idea. So it's red@deadcatcomedy.co.uk. And they would love to hear from you, and they would love to hear your ideas. So I was thinking, you and I, right now, come up with a movie idea in 5 minutes and pitch it to them.
Can we do it tomorrow?
No. Let's do it now.
God, I can't think on the spot.
You love pandemic movies.
Oh God, yes, but you've had a chance to think about this.
I can promise you 100% I have not been thinking about this. I've been thinking about rugby league logistics being played in New Zealand. I have not thought about this movie idea whatsoever. This is our big
It's gonna be
chance.
shit then, isn't it?
Well, it might be shit. It might be a shit movie. You watch a lot of shit movies. You love Tremors. You've seen them all.
I have.
All we need to do is spend 5 minutes from right now coming up with our movie pitch. We've got this. We can do this. And it just has to be about a pandemic. So what are you thinking?
I'm thinking we should do it tomorrow.
No, this is your chance. It's the end of the show. 5 minutes right now. We pitch a movie. What do you got?
Nothing.
This is an elevator pitch. We're in the elevator with Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah.
He's trying to touch you, but
yeah.
he's going to take your idea on board and maybe go forward with it as long as you do some things for him.
I've got nothing.
Oh, come on. Come on. Come on. G yourself up. G yourself up. Move your arms. Stop having your arms folded. Stop looking at me like that. Like, just...
I think it's an interesting idea, but I have it's like it's all very well having an elevator pitch, but most people have an idea before they get in the elevator.
You've got
It's
this...
not like the ride of the elevator is their time to both come up with and pitch their pitch.
Come on, get on board. Get on the train. Here we go. Big
What was
idea
your
time.
idea then?
No, I'm saying we come up with one together. We just brainstorm it right now. 5 minutes right now we do this. Come on. Be brave. I know the listeners are behind us. They are. Come on. Come on.
They're behind me again.
You
What
just,
is this
why are you
talk on about?
slouching even further? Just uncross
Because I've
your
been
arms.
sat still for an hour, my
Come on.
leg hurts, and you're asking me to do something that I would normally, put some quality time and effort into.
Okay, here's our pitch. There's a woman. She has a sore leg, right?
That's just describing how we are.
Yeah, well, we have to start from somewhere because we've got nothing at the minute. So there's a woman. She's really grumpy. She has her arms folded. She has a sore leg. She can't go anywhere because of the pandemic. Hey?
Yeah.
See it? Yeah.
Well, this doesn't sound like an exciting movie. It doesn't sound. It's certainly not an exciting life.
Who are we going to cast to play you in this movie?
I don't know.
Who do you want to be played by?
I don't know.
Ed O'Neill?
I don't know who that is.
He's the granddad in Modern Family. He's the oldest guy in Modern Family. So he puts on a dress and he plays you, right?
Yeah.
And he's trying to survive a pandemic. He's got his arms folded. He's got that look on his face that only Ed O'Neill can do so well. Him and you. What? Yeah. What threat from the outside world is going to come and ruin his world?
Some Kiwi.
Some Kiwi asshole from the outside world is going to enter his home. Her home? His home. Whatever Ed O'Neill's doing. And how is this person going to antagonize our main
Probably make them do a
protagonist?
5-minute movie pitch with no preparation.
All right. I'll let you off the hook. But you better think of something by tomorrow.
Yeah.
You
I
promise?
will. Yes.
All right. We're all going to hold you to it.
Yeah.
All right. Till
Don't
next
forget,
time.
people, do the Big Nerd Pub quiz tonight.
Yep. We'll be there.
8 o'clock
8 o'clock
on YouTube
on YouTube
or Facebook.
or Facebook. All right. Till next time.
Bye.